earning both a bachelor's and an MBA. He has a degree in law from the University of Virginia. In the last day and a half, we've talked a lot about competitiveness in Texas from a tax and fiscal perspective, but we also have to bear in mind that competitiveness in business is a broader issue than just tax and fiscal policies. It also requires a good legislative base as well as fair and equitable laws, and that's the role of the Attorney General. The Attorney General's office is charged by the Texas Constitution to defend the laws and the Constitution of the state of Texas and to represent the state in litigation. In that regard, we've asked General Paxton to speak to us about the current lawsuit challenging the school finance system, because that is a key issue for us. Again, help me in welcoming General Paxton to the stage.
Earl, thanks for that kind introduction. It's great to be here. I left my condo this morning. I woke up with the water flowing through my roof, so I left a few buckets there, and I'm going to have to go back to my buckets soon. So, good start to the day. Well, it's great to be here to see some of my friends from the House, Donna Howard, and of course Senator Bentoncourt, and many of you I've had the experience or the privilege of working with over the last couple of years, and it's just great to be here this morning. You know, I was Senator Bentoncourt. I had to actually leave the Senate. Over the years, I've been voted as one of the most conservative House members, and then I think I was the most conservative Senate member my year in the Senate, my 2 years in the Senate. But then with Senator Bentoncourt and Senator Burton and Taylor and others, I had to leave because I was worried I'd be considered a moderate. So here we are in the AG's office. Well, you know, the other thing that was amazing to watch from the AG's offices for years, you know, we've been trying to get tax reduction. And so it was actually kind of fun to actually be out of that process, but get to watch the legislature fighting over who was going to reduce which tax and by how much. So that was a welcome sight for me after 12 years in the legislature trying to do that. Well, let me say I'm honored to be here with people who are so passionate and educated about issues like taxation and what it can do to build, maintain, and potentially destroy our economy. Your guidance and advice has been key in shaping the policies that have elevated Texas so profoundly, really, for decades. And I thank you all for the part you played in that. It's been my philosophy for a long time, whether I was in the House or the Senate, that people do more good with their own money than they do by giving it to the government. And Texans agree, which is one of the main reasons our state is at the national forefront of the economy and job creation. It's also why it's so important that we protect the laws and policies we've put in place over the years. In that way, my office is at the front lines in helping keeping taxes lower in Texas. We defend the policies and the laws passed by the legislature, measures that are often backed by your own data. Unfortunately, opponents of Texas policy use the courts as legislative do-overs, where they can seek to accomplish what they couldn't accomplish during a session. If they don't like a law that passes or how much they've been given in the budget, they'll take their case to court for years or even decades. That's what the school finance case currently before the Texas Supreme Court is really all about. For more than 3 decades, our state has been mired in lawsuit after lawsuit regarding school finance. My entire time in the legislature, we were trying to adjust to those court cases. And I know there are people who think that the solution to school funding is an ever-increasing supply of money. To them, every problem schools encounter can be solved by a hefty influx of cash. Anything short of that merits a lawsuit. For us, we're defending the decisions made by the Texas legislature and the people who elected them. That's how it's supposed to work. The legislature creates the laws, and the judicial branch interprets them. That's the way it's supposed to go. That's basic civics. It's also worth noting that our schools are doing well. Texas had the 2nd highest graduation rate in the nation, with nearly 9 out of every 10 students graduating on time. If you focus on Hispanic and African American students, we're best in the nation in on-time graduation. It's remarkable. More students are passing their end of the course exams on their first try as well, with more than 80% of them successfully finishing even before they begin their senior year. Are there ways we can improve? Of course there are. But the proper way to do that is through the legislative process, not endless court cases, as we've seen. However, that's not how many people seem to think. In court this past September, just last month, the judge asked the plaintiffs how could the legislature be assured any measure they passed would meet the plaintiff's standards. An opposition lawyer suggested very clearly they'd simply take this state to court again and again. If the courts say it's sufficient, it's sufficient. It's a never-ending cycle of perpetual litigation. As the Attorney General, it's my responsibility to fight back. Another example of evading the legislature can be found in a case my office intervened in just a week. I was just talking to Dale about this. The City of Austin versus Travis Central Appraisal District. In this case, Austin wants one thing and one thing only: more tax revenue. They explicitly said so in court. For years, taxing authorities have been pushing the legislature to repeal the non-disclosure laws. This law allows people to refuse to disclose to a taxing authority how much they pay for their property. Austin is convinced that the property that people own is worth a lot more than the city can prove. So they want to make it a requirement that property owners disclose all of their personal information regarding purchases and sales. They're telling the people of Texas they're targeting businesses, which is bad enough. But the truth is, doing away with the non-disclosure law would expose every property owner in Texas to higher property taxes. That is, and should be, troubling to all of us, and it's certainly worth the fight. Does the property tax system in Texas need to be reformed? I think most in the state would agree that it does. But the way to fix it is not by taking away Texans' protections, and certainly not by bypassing the legislature to do so. There are many ways we defend the laws of our state, although sometimes we have to go on offense. And in the last week, that's what we've done. We've sued the federal government twice. First, as part of a 24-state coalition we're leading to stop the EPA from imposing its power plan. This plan would result in significantly higher electricity costs for everyone, along with a less reliable power grid. What is that, if not an indirect tax on everyone who needs electricity to work, cook a family meal, or heat and cool their home? In short, this will affect all of us. The rise in electricity prices will hurt businesses, especially manufacturing, as they try to compete in the global marketplace. This all adds up to tougher times for workers and their families. The other lawsuit we filed with Louisiana and Kansas was an attempt to rein in new Obamacare tax being forced upon the states. The tax is called the Health Insurance Provider's Fee, to be paid by states to fund Obamacare's efforts to stay afloat financially. For Texas, the tax adds up to about $84 million this year and is projected to run about $120 million thereafter. There's so many things wrong with this scenario legally that it's almost difficult for us to unpack. But let's just start with a basic violation. The federal government cannot tax a state. That's unconstitutional. Further, this tax was conceived and approved by a private entity empowered by the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, and for the federal government to delegate such duties to a private entity is also unconstitutional. The Constitution further requires that state officials clearly understand conditions attached to accepting federal funds. The Obamacare legislation doesn't say anything about states paying the tax, or the consequences that may come from refusing to pay it. Along these lines, what if a state like Texas decided not to pay this unconstitutional tax? Well, Washington could withhold Medicaid funding for millions of Texas citizens, including over 350,000 children. Think about that just for a moment. Washington is holding hostage the health care of the very poorest Texans so they could prop up insurance coverage for everyone else. More than anything, this kind of threat amounts to the very gun to the head the Supreme Court warned about in earlier rulings on Obamacare. They simply can't punish states for refusing to comply by threatening to destroy their budgets. Of course, lawsuits aren't the only means we utilize to minimize the taxes paid by the people who live and work here. For example, our child support division is the best in the country at ensuring people take care of their primary responsibility, caring for their own children. Thanks to this year-round effort, fewer custodial parents are forced to go to the state for such essentials as food and shelter. Basically, parents are raising their children so the state doesn't have to. The impact is significant. Last year, child support collected nearly $4 billion in child support, a state record. And they did it efficiently, returning more than $12 for every dollar of funding that the division receives. Our General Litigation Division, which defends the state in a variety of lawsuits, saves the state billions in claims, and even works to recover funds for Texas taxpayers. Our Civil Medicaid Fraud Division keeps a close watch on those seeking to game the Medicaid system, and has recovered more than $1.3 billion in taxpayer funds since it was created in 1999. Through actions such as our recent lawsuits filed against Volkswagen, our Consumer Protection Division and Environmental Protection Division work hard to enforce Texas laws against deceptive trade practices, fraud, and misrepresentation. This helps maintain a fair and level marketplace for good businesses to thrive in our state. Through all these efforts, the Office of the Attorney General is always seeking to curb the loss of valuable taxpayer dollars and helping to protect the solid foundation that Texas is built upon. Your organization and ours share the same mission: make a better Texas for all. Once again, I just want to thank you all for having me here this morning. I want to thank you for what you've done, as I've watched over the last 14, for what you've done for our state to make it a better place to live and to make it a better place for businesses to come so that jobs can be created and people have opportunity. Thank you all very much, and God bless you this morning.